we're gonna open it up now. Yes! No, awkward silence, we avoided it. Go!
They're silly questions.
You're never silly.
Actually, it's two questions for the whole panelists. The first one is, what makes you guys to write? Is there a reason behind that make you go to write things, you know? And the second thing is to know, what was the first fan fiction you read? I ask it because I heard that Sheena was, for many people, the first one. I love Sheena, but I never read fan fiction. I didn't know there was fan fiction about Sheena. My first fan fiction I read about women, loving other women, it was actually Once in a Game about Jesse Chandler and Carrie Singer. So it was like a huge, different way to see things that obviously I couldn't get on the TV show because it was canceled. Immediately when this girl thought a party, so I thought.
That's not silly at all, and I just want to repeat really quick. I know someone's recording, and I know hearing all that. So the first question was, oh crap. The first question was what made us start writing, and also the second one was what was the first fanfic we read. We're all about to date ourselves here. Carry on.
Are we going down the line?
Oh crap, I guess we are. Hello.
Tell us how old you are.
29. So I had, I swear I'm answering your question. I had, when I was growing up, my family's computer, and a mirror, a big ass mirror behind it. And so there was no hiding what I was looking at. So I would copy paste a lot of fanfic, put it into WordPerfect. There, I dated myself. Put it into WordPerfect and just like delete it so it looked like I was doing my homework. And they were Janeway and Seven. They were Star Trek Voyager.
So I started writing because I had stories in my head and they wouldn't let me sleep at night, which makes me sound slightly more unhinged than I actually am, I promise. But no, I started writing because I was not finding the stories that I wanted to read. And, it's, my dad's German. If you can't find it, do it yourself, basically was what I was raised with. So that's why I started writing. I can no longer remember what my first fanfic was, but the oldest one that sticks with me is the Xena Uber Accidental Love by B.L. Miller, which I realized is somewhat problematic in some ways in current parlance, but there are some of those scenes that stick out in my head even 20 years later, so yeah.
Well, I've been writing since I was 6 years old, so not published worthy by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always had the creative bug where I've wanted to tell stories. I did it from childhood, and now I do it because it touches people. It sends vibrations through the universe that impact someone else, and I think that's beautiful. And yeah, I hear you going. Okay, so I don't remember the first actual title, but the first ship that I really read that was a lesbian ship was Can't Possible. So, Kigo! Yeah, things for bad girls with green skin, I guess. Or blue.
For me, I started writing fanfiction because I started with Orphan Black, and I was like, where the hell is Gophine here? What was going on? So I was like, oh god damn it, I'm gonna have to write my own story. So that's how I got into writing fanfiction. And yeah, like I said, my first fanfic is a Gophine one. It's really bad because obviously it wasn't my first. Again, English is not my first language actually, so it was pretty shitty. But I shout out to my bad at UD. She helps polish me and all of that. So without her, I would be like, improving as a writer in a foreign language to begin with. So yeah, that's it.
This was hard for me because, like I said, old. So I was sitting there like, was it Xena? And I realized, no, it began with the sad, bad anime. It started with Sailor Moon. And I do not know what Sailor Moon fanfic it is, but I know for a fact, and I'm so happy to say this, it was written by my friend Erica Friedman, who I believe is one of the best fanfic writers ever, and is an expert in all things lesbian for anime and manga. The woman's a genius. I tried to get her to come here, but she's got some disabilities, but hopefully she'll come one one day because I would love for all of you to listen to her. So that's where I started, and I'm pretty sure the now deleted Xena fanfic was the first thing I ever wrote. Existence now erased from the world. So that's pretty much where I started, yeah.
Can we just go back to Carmen saying, "God damn it, now I have to write it." That's like the phrase that every fan fiction writer lives by. God damn it, now I have to write it.
So when I was walking through the main hall earlier today, there was an author who was standing there, and she got me to buy her book by saying it's got fake dating. So I'm such a sucker for fake dating.
She knows her audience.
So I was wondering what are your favorite fanfic tropes?
Having a gay panic attack. You guys go first. I meant it.
Well, since I don't write fanfic, but I do love when they have to share the same bed for the first time. There's just one bed.
And they can't book 2 rooms.
Okay, so this is a less popular fanfic trope that I like. It's the opposite of slow burn. It's when 2 characters fall into bed way too quickly, and then it becomes an absolute disaster after the fact. So, yeah. Yes, but also. What's your favorite?
For me, my favorite tropes are enemies to lovers. That's like, I love the bad blood between the characters and like all the hate and all that, and then suddenly like, whoops, I have feelings. That's one of my favorites. Also, the fake dating, fake marriage. It's also something that is like, also like this, again, it's more or less the same way. Like, you're friends, I'm gonna do you a favor, and then
Whoops, I have feelings.
Those are my favorite.
I never ever write it, but I love to read it, is Hurt Comfort. I don't know why, and it's pretty much like what I drowned in when it came to Star Trek Voyager. I just freaked somebody. Like, Seven would get herself blasted in every fic in some way. Seven's always hurt. Oh no, Seven's always hurt, but she always comes back, it's alright.
Nanoprobe technology.
Can I do one more? Oh, you didn't do yours yet?
I didn't do mine yet.
Yeah. You go first, and then I'll do mine.
Damn it, I was hoping you would go.
Okay, fine, I'll go. Okay, the other one, end of the world sex.
Yeah.
It is always the end of the world, and there is always a broom closet. Okay.
End of Mass Effect 3, before the final battle, like, end of Legend of Korra, before the final showdown, any, like, end of, like, they're about to go risk their lives and almost die, but first they have to have sex. And confess their love.
There's always time for it, everyone.
Confess their love, that's the important part.
Always. Okay. So my novel is lesbian enemies to lovers, so I kind of have to say that. Guys, what is it? Hurt Comfort?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that my favorite? What do I write most of?
Even hit like full words and then just do words.
Maybe. There's a lot. There's like 700 something chapters. There's a lot of it. It's upsetting. Is it Hurt Comfort? Is that my favorite? I'm asking other people what my favorite is. Okay, we're gonna say Hurt Comfort, and then I'll probably shout a random trope later.
Yes.
Others. Damn it. Oh, wait, yes, you.
I'm gonna stand up. I have a question for the whole panel, but first I would like to say, Dreiser, you wrote my all-time favorite Hermione Fleur fanfic. No offense for you.
The one that my friend took over for me.
Yeah, but the scene where Hermione and Fleur finally kissed for the first time, I feel like that was my all-time favorite. I read it like 5 times.
I tried to get Dylan to come here. I tried to get her to come. I was like, you need to come tell everybody about your angst. And that's
Every time I'm on fanfiction.net, I set category 1 to romance, category 2 to angst.
Yeah.
But regardless, my question is, like, when I first started writing fanfiction, first one was Hermione Fleur actually, but I felt a little bit nervous to tell my friends and a little bit ashamed, and I felt like I had 2, coming out stories, one as a lesbian and one as a fanfic writer. When did you tell your friends and, your maybe family, and how did that go?
Do we need to start going this way?
My mom edits my novels. My sex scenes are explicit. My first book, I said, by the way, you can skip chapter 15. And she said, you're married, I know you have sex. And I said, I know you know. I don't want to know that you know. So just get your mom to edit your There are certain stories that I like don't post anywhere that I know she can find.
Okay, when did I come out as a fan fiction writer? Well, after I stopped teaching small children, I am a flutist, or I was a professionally trained flutist, taking gigs and doing CDs and all that crap. And I loved it, but not as much as writing. But I was teaching as well to make ends meet. And you know, when you're teaching a 6-year-old how to play piano or a 10-year-old how to play flute, you don't want them to look up your name and find that's why I pseudonym. But then when I stopped teaching and devoted myself to writing full time, I told everybody my mother-in-law has read some of my books. My parents and I are not that close in that way, so they don't, but my other family members have read them, and they like them. And sometimes it's embarrassing, but I'm also proud because I get to explain to them that I'm having an impact on people. And sometimes they don't understand it. Like my father-in-law is confused, like, well, why does it matter that the main character's a lesbian? Aren't people just people? And I'm like, no. I mean, yes, but no. We never get to see, imagine if you're watching TV and reading books and everything is in a second language. Like this is your mother tongue, you feel comfortable with it, it touches you deeply. And it's like, if you have to see everything through a filter, and I think he gets it. But, so I'm actually proud now to come out and tell people that I write fan fiction and that I write lesfic because it's important and I'm, you know, increasing awareness about it.
Oh, well, that's good for you, Rick. Because I think only one of my friends know I write stuff. She doesn't exactly know what I'm writing, and that's the extent of it. Like, oh, God forbid someone finds me online, because, oh, no, they can know what I'm writing. Like, obviously, my country, which is Panama, Latin America is a really difficult place to come out. Like, I'm not out, but we know that I'm not out. And it's not because I'm not proud of it, but again, there's a lot of homophobia in Latin America, a lot. And it's really tough for us. So again, writing fan fiction for me is like my tool to connect with who I am in reality. Like, I want to be a proud bi person, but I can't in my country. I really can't. So for me, it's another tool to feel like part of the community, to put a little bit of how I feel and share it with you all in the interwebs. That's where I feel safe.
But
so,
you're
yeah.
creating, that's beautiful.
Well, that's cool, but let's keep it on the internet, please. Yeah, but that's about it.
For me, I don't bother to try to even approach people that don't have the slightest knowledge of fandom. Because trying to explain it to them is not something that's ever going to access in their heads. So my friends that are nerds, that are into fandoms, whether it's my friends that are comic book or D&D players, or my friends that are gamers. Basically, if you're a friend of mine and you're a geek, I'll let you know, or I'll let you. But if it's just like my brother who is a tax attorney, he's just gonna be looking at me like, big sister, you're crazy. Why? Like, why are you writing these things? Because he's got no concept of it. He's not into things like that. So that's just how it is for myself. And one of the things that I love about fanfic, and I forgot to say this, is I'm at this convention with my best friend since I was 16, and I met him on a Buffy fanfic board. Yeah. So it was called The Kitty. And it was like where we were doing insane things on there, and I wrote nonsensical stories about Tara dressing like Stevie Nicks because Tara dressed like Stevie Nicks, and she always lit candles, and I always felt that was highly dangerous for Tara to be doing that. It's like she's going to catch herself on fire, twirling around in her dorm. So to me, that's what the great thing about it is I've met so many friends online with like-minded interests, and that's the best thing, You can have a whole different life online that you can't have in the real space, and that's how it was for me for the longest time, because I was a teenager, a gay queer teenager in the 90s, and the 90s was not fun for us, y'all. Not fun at don't tell anybody that's not a nerd.
Can I just say that every person I've ever slept with has been because of fan fiction? Every single one.
So, there's a lot of smut. My parents, no, they don't. My parents knew that I was writing a novel for 5 years, and they never asked me once what it was about because they knew that it was gay. So they don't really care in a negative way. That said, all my friends know not to bother me on Monday nights because that's my fan fiction writing nights. Don't bother me. And they all know why. They all know it's lots of hurt, comfort, and smut. Stuff. Also angst. It's your fault. So, are we 650 or are we 7?
650.
650, that's what I
If you
thought.
want to extend, there's nothing after this.
Hey y'all, there's nothing after this! So, to respect everybody's time, first of all, feel free to make an exit. It will not be awkward. We will not heckle you. Bye! People wave at you very nicely. Bye! So feel free to get out of here, but I think to respect everybody's time, let's do like 1 or 2 more. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go till 7. We have 7 minutes left.
Oh shit! All right, let's do it.
I was curious about the process of turning a fan fiction into a book. I read some along with Supercat. When I did that thing where you go to write a 2-chapter fic, and that turns into part 1 of a multi-chapter supercar. You know.
As it does.
I just went stuff and you just switch the character names because there's so much that relies on people coming in with an understanding of the fandom and the background and the emotions that are already brewing. So I was just wondering how you do that with your translation process.
Oh, absolutely. I got that one. Okay, so I always say, if I've written a piece of fan fiction and you can switch the names of the characters with some other pairing, I've done it wrong. There's so much about fan fiction that's personal that you take from the source material, even in an alternate universe. You have to get the essence of the character. Like, I don't know, for Lexa, she is a warrior. She is a selfless person who desperately wants to believe that humanity is good, but they keep proving her wrong. And that's part of her strength. But, so you have these really complex, intimate threads that are part of fandom that matter, and they require a building block, you know? But it is possible, if you do enough rewriting and you do enough thinking, to turn something that starts out as fan fiction into something original. I will say, when I started Tengoku, and I wrote the first few chapters as for Asami fan fiction, Asami definitely has some anger issues in the book. The TV show and the comics, but she kind of suppresses it, and then it boils over a little bit. Like when she snaps Eric's hand back. So she tries to keep her temper cool, and then it blows up. And so one thing that I changed with Imari, who is the character that Asami eventually became, Imari doesn't have that issue. What she has is a thirst to prove herself. She desperately wants her father to respect her as his heir. She wants all the other lords to respect her as, you know, the next lady apparent to her town. And you have to find a driving motivation for your original fiction character and make sure it aligns. So Imari's motivation is to get her hand back, which, I mean, of course she doesn't, spoiler alert, because that would be kind of ableist. But she wants to get her missing hand back, and she has that goal. And if you give your characters a goal, and if you give them a personality trait that's very strong, you can make them feel real and authentic and start to develop them outside of the framework of fandom. So I had to think, the questions I asked myself were, what does Imari want most in the world? That has nothing to do with Asami, nothing to do with her story. What does Imari want most in the world? And I came up with answers to those questions, and it's a question that changes throughout the book.
Yeah, and I also, just really quick, I want to be able to take one more question, but...
Sorry,
you're good. I was really moved by what you said about each character sort of having their own motivations separate from their romantic interests, because that's what we never get on TV, right? And so I felt like it's, you know, the lesbian possibly, and the girlfriend or whatever, which is deeply, deeply frustrating and dehumanizing, and I think that's another power of fan fiction, right? All the backstory fanfics and all the ones that are like different perspectives from characters who aren't the perspective character in the show. So I think that's always really powerful, and I wanted, sometimes we know it, but we don't like think explicitly like what we're doing, but that's a really huge thing that we do. So that's super important. And go, and then
So I also write supercore. They're supercore head. But I have problems turning my fanfic into longer stories. Like I can't come up with plot points. I don't want to put angst because I hate it with a deep burning passion. So how do you guys go from like a short story to a long story? How did you begin writing long stories? You laugh. You just write it on you just go.
Well, I laugh because my debut novel was 3 novels. And for me, the problem has never been how do I write a long story. I have problems writing short stories. But I mean, going back to what Ray was just saying, it's about conflict, and conflict does not have to be angst. I mean, angst is usually internal conflict or interpersonal conflict, but there are all sorts of other conflicts out there. I mean, you can bring in other characters to create conflict points. You can events create conflict points. One of the reasons why I don't write contemporary romance is because I have problems coming up with plot points that don't involve explosions and fight scenes and that sort of thing. So that's why I write what I write and not contemporary romance. But it's all about finding those conflicts.
I write a lot of longer stories, and for myself, like the one that I'm writing right now is Supercorp. It's Kara and Lena, and it's not angsty at all. It's just called the Science Guild, and the whole purpose of the fic is what if Kara was fucking smart. Like, that's the whole point of the story.
Lights would go off. Kara hears you and appreciates it.
But I know it's not an angsty story by any means, and it's fairly long. It's gonna go, I planned 10 chapters. And basically what I did is when I decided I wanted to write the story, I came up with an overall concept of the story, which was, I wrote down these are the things I want to happen. I want Kara to be a science reporter. I want her to be known and famous as Kara Danvers, not as Supergirl. I want Lena to be a queer icon because if she's gay, she would be a queer icon. I want there to be a huge supportive fandom around Lena based upon that. Like there's a whole army of gays that loved her since she was a teenager because she came, so I just wrote down these things that this, I want all to happen. And so basically, after I wrote down my list, I then proceeded to just plot out every single chapter. And that's how I always take my longer stories, and it's also a way to keep myself motivated, because it's hard to be like, well, I don't know where the story's gonna go when I fucking plotted out the entire chapter and I know exactly where the story's going. So that's what helps me. So just make a little wish list of stuff you want to see happen, And it doesn't have to be angsty for the most part. It's just stuff that you want to see happen in the stories that help the characters and the interactions evolve. So that's for me.
Following that idea, what I do usually, I write in a short notebook going from point A to point B, and I start writing. But sometimes I'm like struck by an idea, like, oh, this could be interesting. I start going with the flow, and when I end up my poor girl, like, holy shit, how much did you write? So 8K words, 10K words. She always asks me, how many words? Like, 10K.
And then you have to write a paper for school and you're screwed.
Yeah. So yeah, basically following that, like, the plot points, and I mean, if you get something, you get inspired, go for it. Like, don't be afraid, it's a draft. You can manipulate as much as you want, so just write whatever, and then you can go back to it. So just write, go with the flow, and just let it go.
All right, so we gotta go, but can you all do me a favor? I didn't either, but can you all do me a favor and please thank our ClexaCon staff folks, both the ones in here and elsewhere. It is a long-ass weekend, so make sure you thank all of the folks and remind them to hydrate and eat. Thank you guys so much.